Welcome back. We are joined by Phillip Syfrit, local historian, and Phillip, you guys, me, Randy, the staff of the Richmond Register are all working on a very important project.
We're working on a project.
You're here today to talk about a very special anniversary coming.
A couple, 2, 3, 5 years ago, a movie came out that was We Are Marshall, and it talked about the plane crash that killed the Marshall's football team. A terrible story, just absolutely terrible story. Well, we have a very, very similar story right here in Richmond, where in 1972, some fellas got together and chartered a plane, went down to the far western part of the state to watch Madison High School play in the state playoffs. And unfortunately, Madison did lose the game, and not too long after takeoff, they were coming home late that night. The plane unfortunately crashed, and it killed 11 people, 10 of them from right here in Richmond.
Yeah, and we are coming up on the 50th anniversary
and we're
of that.
coming up on the 50th anniversary of it. And when
Friday,
I talk
November 17th.
It's Friday, November 17th. A lot of people think, or when you talk to people in Richmond, and you say the plane crash, some people think of the plane crash over at Bluegrass Field 15, 18 years ago. Most people, even though it's 50 years later, still remember the plane crash of 1972. They can tell you where they were and what they were doing when they heard about it. And Richmond stopped for a week. And if you ask anybody, I mean, there was funeral after funeral. If you didn't know someone on that plane, you knew somebody who did. And it really affected this community. And it's still, the wounds are still somewhat fresh. We're not wanting to scratch a scab, it's just remembering a scar that happened here.
Yeah, I mean, the other day when we met to talk about all this, you and I think very accurately said it's probably the most historical moment of the past half century.
In the past half century in Madison County, if it's not number one, it's got to be in the top three. Easily.
We've had some tornado outbreaks and stuff.
Had tornadoes, and we had some fires and things like that.
Had Eastern winning some football championships.
That's right.
But yeah, this is obviously
that's right.
Different, unfortunately, a different kind of thing.
I was 9 years old when this happened. I know you all can't believe that I was ever 9 years old, but Eastern was playing Moorhead in football, last game of the season, and my father and I, we went to the game, and at the time I did not know this plane crash had happened or anything, but you could feel a pall over the entire stadium. And of course this happened late on Friday night. It was Saturday morning here, but it was Friday night there. And the word is getting out, and it just, the town just noticeably became depressed. It just really, the mood of the town just came down. And waiting to find out what happened. There was a lot of talk about this trip, and nobody was exactly sure who was even on the plane. So, you know, someone said, well, I didn't know he was supposed to be on the plane. Was he on it? Well, no, something happened and he couldn't go, or he was sick, and then, but it just took a while. And I was surprised when we were doing the research on this that the Register back then, which this is a bound copy of it, had as much information in basically 8 hours. Because it was an afternoon paper then. This happened 11 o'clock midnight our time. They're having to go to press about 10:30. So to get this much together in such a short period of time.
Yeah, and that's actually, we can lift this up here and get a good look at this. This is the actual paper from that day.
Right here. November 18th's paper, but it happened down there on November 17th. So had a little time change there.
And of course, to us folks at the Register, even though I wasn't even born at the time, there were 2 members of the Richmond Register staff.
2 members of the Richmond Register staff were there.
Jimmy House, the news editor, and Roy R. Watson, the assistant ad manager.
And like I said, you knew people all through this. I was talking to a fellow this week, and if you look at their photographs and they're captured in time, you don't see these people age 50 years. But how do these fellows get together? What's the common thread? Well, 2 of them were attorneys. Okay, we got that. But they were all into the local softball scene. And that's what really connected all these fellas together. A lot of them did go to Madison High School. They were young professionals, the vast majority of them. But it was the softball is what brought them together.
Yeah, and what we're doing here, and of course you're kind of leading the charge on this, but there is going to be a documentary. We are going to sit down with a lot of people.
We are working on a documentary, and we're asking people to contact me, and we'll give you the contact information here in just a second, to set up a time to come in and just it's an interview, but it's more of just tell us your experience. Where did you hear about this? What was your relationship to these fellas? Did you know this fella, but I didn't know this guy? And there's no guarantee we can use all of it, but it's to keep this memory alive. It's to, when people think about it, the scar that they'll see, they're remembering what happened, because Richmond stood still. It's stopped completely when this happened.
Yeah, I mean, I moved here in 2003. Of course, I wasn't even born when this happened, like I said, but
don't push it.
Well, I've heard that, but I heard this almost from the first day that I came here, and I heard about this from lots and lots and lots of people, even though that was 30 years before I even came here.
There was a memorial downtown between the Episcopal Church and when First Baptist was on the corner. Then when the bank came in, things had to change, so they moved the memorial up to Richmond City Park. And then 5 years ago, the city fathers and I got together and we put up a interpretive marker about it, because they had the memorial but didn't tell you what it was. So this helps people understand what happened here. I don't know if you didn't live through it, if you could really experience what happened here, even for a 9-year-old.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. There's a lot of folks. I mean, you've already reached out to a ton of people. You've got the coach of the Madison High team.
We're working on him. We're going to, but he'll do it. But if you'd like to be a part of this project, and like I said, we can't guarantee that everything that we have is going to be on this. You can give me a call out at the Battle of Richmond Visitor Center, 859-624-0013. I'll get your name and number, and we'll get back with the rest of the committee to start setting up appointments to do these interviews.
Yeah.
And they're not going to be very highbrow stuff. It's going to be very personal. Where were you? How you knew them?
And we love to have.
What are you still thinking about today?
Yeah, we love to have family members, but even
We're
friends,
working on that. Yeah.
Classmates, anybody with any connection to it who feels like they want to share part of their story, and and can contribute something to.
That's right.
To this, so it's not really. We don't want to.
We don't.
It could be pretty much anybody who has some kind of
That's
connection.
right. We don't want this to be a downer, but we don't want to forget these 10 fellas.
Yeah, and it's and you're talking about all these years later how powerful it is, and we talked about you've contacted some folks that were just like, nope, I can't do it.
Well,
even 50 years later, they won't come in here and talk about it.
In 15 seconds, he was extremely emotional, and I just left it alone. Just, if they can't do it, they can't do it, and that's okay.
Yeah. And that was kind of how you were telling us how when you put the new. When you did the ceremony a couple of years ago, it was very emotional.
Yeah, we did the sign, and I didn't think we would have necessarily a whole lot of people there for the dedication and all. We had 175 people show up, and was very surprised. A lot of family members there, and it was overdue. But we're going to make it right now.
Yeah. I've been coming up on the 50th anniversary. We have a lot of things, a lot of moving pieces here, so we don't want to make any promises, but we are hoping to have a premiere on that day of the documentary. But the world is, we don't want to make promises. Promises we can't.
We'll get it done, but now the date might be a little bit fluid.
Yeah. So we're hoping to have a premiere that night. We don't have a location yet, I don't think, but we are planning to have a public debut of this. And like I said, Randy will be filming a lot of this. And do you want to mention who we have narrator? Is that
Wendy Barnett.
Wendy Barnett from EKU will be narrating it for us, and I'll be helping out doing some interviews. I know Blake Vickers from the Register will also be doing some interviews. I think we're just going to bring people in here, right, Randy? We're just in the studio here. And
we'll set up an appointment time and day, or it's a work in progress.
Work in progress, that's right.
But this is kind of our call to the public here to say, hey, if you want to be part of this, please contact Phillip, and we'll definitely set up a time. And like I said, you don't have to be related to him. You don't. Yeah, I mean, even if you weren't friends with them, even if you just have some recollections of that day, any connection you have to it, just to add to the overall, picture of what this meant to Richmond and this community.
That's right, and how it has shaped your life, and thus maybe hopefully our community's a little bit better, even though it's a bad thing that happened.
Yeah, and you've done a whole bunch of research. You've got all these. You put all the obituaries and everything, and you contacted because the plane actually it was in Todd County. Was it?
The plane was in Todd County. Madison had gone down to play Trigg County in the playoffs, but Trigg County's football field was apparently unusable for some reason. I never really figured that out. So they played in Hopkins County. And then Hopkins County was next to Todd County. Plane took off, got into Todd County, and crashed.
Yeah, and it had to have been kind of. I mean, the team I'm sure traveled back that night.
Now that I don't know, but I can only assume that they, had to take buses and came back, and that was pretty much before a lot of places had interstates. Yeah. So they more than likely didn't know about this, and if you do know, let us know.
Yeah,
they didn't know about it until they got back home.
Yeah, and who was the coach? You said
the coach was Monty Joe Lovell at the time. Jim Fleener was the principal. We're hoping to get them to come in and tell us about how they felt, their experiences, how they found out about it.
Yeah.
And
I mean, I can imagine they probably. I mean, it's obviously '72. This is before cell phones, anything. So they probably had no idea until they got off that bus the next morning.
That's right. That's exactly right. I mean, there's some phone calls going back and forth. I talked to a fella that he was in Alabama, and his wife and him were going to school down there, and the phone rang at 4:00 in the morning, and it was like, what in the world is going on? And it's starting to spread.
Yeah.
And.
Yeah, like you said, though, kudos to the old school journalists here at the Richmond Register back in 1972. This is the afternoon paper for that Saturday, and there's a full length story in here about it.
There's a story here about the mayor at the time, Wallace Maffitt, declared a period of mourning. Here, we have a letter from the mayor of Elkton, Kentucky, and Todd County, offering whatever help his community could to hear. What they could do, I don't know, but it's coming together, and we want you to be a part of it.
Yeah, absolutely. Reach out to us, and like we said, we want this to, obviously it's a very somber thing, but we do want to celebrate's not the right word, but memorial.
We're commemorating.
Commemorating.
That's right.
And obviously want to keep this fresh in everybody's mind. So I said, if there's anybody out there who wants to be a part of this, please contact Phillip. Or even if you see me or Randy, or call the Register or anywhere. I mean, we'll be happy to set it up as well.
We'll get it figured out.
But a lot of good stuff here. And I know that 50 years ago, but a lot of folks who were this impacted their life are still with us, is still living.
Oh, still a lot of people are still here. Knew the people, the brothers and sisters, children. Some of these fellas.
Yeah. So we'd certainly like to please reach out to us and be part of it. And like I said, we're gonna do this in a very classy, professional way.
Oh, that's right.
And it's not. Of course, anything Randy does with KY Media and .net is obviously well done and well produced. And that's your free plug for the day, Randy. So we're going to do a good job on this and hope to have a public premiere on the actual date, November 17th, or on the 50th anniversary. So it's going to be a lot of good. All right. Appreciate you coming in.
Appreciate you having us. And like I said, if you think you want to be a part of this, just give me a call out there at the battlefield at 859-624-0013.
All right, well, that'll wrap up this week's special edition of the Richmond Register Sports Show, the Saturday edition. But we'll be back next week on Sunday with a regularly scheduled edition. But of course, as always, Richmond R Sports on Twitter is the place to be to follow everything in Madison County, along with Register Sports on Facebook and at richmondregister.com. See you next week.
The Richmond Register Sports Show is brought to you by MetroNet, superfast internet, simply a better connection. Central Kentucky Pressure Washing. Total Comfort, heating and air conditioning. Let Total Comfort keep you cool or warm this winter. Call for service or for a free replacement quote.
Wynn's Auto Detailing Service.
And by KYmedia.net, digital media solutions on your terms.